Hello, welcome to another Parallel Project Training podcast. My name's Ruth Phillips, and I'm here today with Paul Neighbour to talk about the topic of leadership. We're talking about leadership in relation to the APM PMQ syllabus for exams starting in September 2024. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you very much.
Yeah, good.
So leadership, quite a hot topic at the moment, lots to talk about today. Should we start talking about what makes a good leader, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, it's quite good, the learning objective they got in the syllabus, really.
Okay.
Understand leadership as a way to empower and inspire others to achieve success or deliver successful projects. Do you ever see the film Bugs Life?
No, I haven't.
You've never seen Bugs Life?
No.
Oh, you should watch Bugs Life. I'll have to tell you the whole plot of Bugs Life now, won't I? There's these ants, and the ants live on this island, and one of the ants escapes, and the ants never leave the island. And every year the crickets come and levy them, and they have to pay a levy to the crickets. And it gets to the point where the ants have a revolution and say, well, we're not paying this levy anymore. And the leader of the crickets says, well, we've got to teach these ants a lesson. It's not about teaching the ants a lesson. It's about maintaining our way of life. It's not just about if they don't pay the fee this time. It's about that bigger purpose, isn't it? So,
Yes.
And then at the end of it goes, oh, he's quite an inspirational leader, isn't he? It's just quite a funny little...
I think there's actually so much that we can unpick from films about a lot of these topics. That might be a whole new podcast series.
What outtakes from films, yes.
That's it. Yeah.
So-
I like that definition with both those words, empower and inspire, because I think that often people think about good leaders as just doing that inspiring part, being charismatic. But I think actually it is important to empower, to motivate people to be able to take on responsibility for actions within the project to be able to be successful. So I think that's quite a good definition of it.
There's a really good paper on the APM's website, Survival Leadership Skills for Project Managers. And it's things like being able to see over the horizon, being able to inspire and motivate people. It's not in this syllabus, sadly. I don't know quite why. But I would recommend, if people want to understand leadership, they did one of these things where they interviewed lots of project leaders around and practicing today. I think this module is probably more fundamental and foundational than that, really.
There is lots of information out there. Another characteristic is about their ability to deal with uncertainty and provide that continuity of vision. Yeah,
that was one of their APM survival. The ability to take decisions in the face of uncertainty, which is different from BAU. You know, when you're operating a railway or a bank, then you don't decide to just do something on a whim. You wait till you've got all the facts, fact-based decision taking.
Yes.
Whereas in projects, if you waited till you had all the facts,
we'd never be doing the project.
And I think that's one of the core differences between projects and business as usual, is that the challenges of taking decisions in the face of uncertainty, and you never will know all the facts till the end of the project,
and still then you may not know all of the facts.
Yeah, that's right, till 5 years later.
So let's have a look at the learning outcomes on the syllabus then. So the first one is we've got to understand how leadership impacts team performance and motivation. And they've asked us to look at three particular models: Maslow, Herzberg and McGregor.
Let's just wrap these models up into one. Well, Maslow and Herzberg basically say there are basic things that you need to provide to people. And if they haven't got those basic things in place, they get quite demotivated. And Maslow calls it a hierarchy.
Yes.
And Herzberg calls it a hygiene factor. So these are things like food, shelter, heat, light, water. And then they say that there are higher things such as the job itself, interesting work, what Maslow calls self-actualization, that really do motivate you.
Yeah.
And McGregor's a bit the same. So McGregor X and Y talks about McGregor X. There's a sort of like people only go to work because they get the pay and you can't trust them. And then theory Y is people come to work because they're interested in the work. So how does that apply to projects? Well, you have to get the basics of the hygiene factors right, don't you?
Absolutely. That's the key thing. They are not motivators in themselves, but without those things, people don't perform well.
Yeah.
I always think about this on training courses, that we'd quite often when we get feedback about the food or the temperature of the room, because although obviously you're not going on a training course to get a good lunch or to be in a temperate room, but if those things aren't right, you can't really engage with the learning and you can't get the most out of that training course.
Yeah. Anyone who's done a project at a remote location away from the office knows that the most important thing to get is the porta cabins, the toilets,
Yeah,
The mess facility, where people are going to park, where they're going to
absolutely.
stay,
Yeah,
and all of that stuff is vitally important. And if you don't look after that part, then everyone gets very angry and depressed, and their motivation will drop. But if you give them a fantastic office, they're not more motivated.
that's right.
So
It's just their comfort then enables
yeah,
them to perform.
that's right. So then we move to the other side. What can we inspire people to do? So what
Mm.
work can we give them? How can we align the work packages of the project to the interests and skills of
Yeah,
the people so that it grows and stretches and develops them?
yeah,
And that must be
absolutely.
possible to take people who are more junior and use the project as a way of them growing and developing
Yeah.
and getting more experience.
There's
And
a
that,
bit of overlap there with the items in the team management
yes, of
syllabus
course,
item as
there's,
well, in that matching people's skills, personalities to the work that we're asking them to do, that again, then it becomes a much more fulfilling job that they're working on.
yeah. So it's about setting some targets that
Yeah.
are not easy, but
Mm,
stretch them a little bit and then reward them when they achieve those targets.
yeah.
And that's what Maslow and Herzberg say. McGregor's a bit weird because it says like there's people who are theory X and theory Y, but I think behind McGregor, probably if you looked at it in more detail, it is about you've got to do the basics, but also you've got to have the supervision right, but also you've got to understand what really does motivate people.
Yeah, absolutely. With McGregor as well, I've quite often looked at that and thought that actually it's about having that awareness as a leader that people, the workers, as McGregor would call them, people do things in slightly different ways, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they are disengaged, not enjoying things, lazy, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's just that they need different ways of, let's say, reflecting, thinking, innovating, coming up with new ideas, and that might not necessarily match the leader's expectation of that, but they still need that room to do that.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of a theory that theory X and theory Y, so Y is good and X is bad. I think that leads on to our next thing, which is actually you might need a bit of theory X at some time.
So that second learning outcome then is all about understanding why it may be necessary to change leadership styles depending on the situation. So what
Yeah.
are some of the leadership styles that we could change between?
So they talk about being more autocratic or
Yeah.
democratic or delegative, laissez-faire, and they all have their place.
So when would it be good to use an autocratic style? Because normally, again, that's one that people go, oh, that's not so good. We don't want to be using that too much. But when is it needed?
Well, this is when you use your authority as a leader, say, right, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And this is why we need to do it. And actually, my Bugs Life example is a good example of that. Sometimes you just need to say, right, this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it. I know you might not like it, but this is what we need to do today.
Yeah.
So when you're putting a bid together or when you've got an urgent deadline you have to meet, you just have to say, right, this is what you're doing. You need to do it. It's your job. Do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess any time that one person, a sponsor, the project manager, makes a decision, that they are having to be autocratic.
I don't know that I agree with that because you can have a participative approach, participative decision where you take the views of everybody and you consult the key stakeholders. I actually think this more autocratic style is more important at the beginning of the project because I think you need to set out clearly what the vision and purpose is.
Yeah.
And you need to stand up at the front and say, right, this is what I think we need to do. So you do need to be quite directive at that point. But then if you think about forming, storming, norming, performing, you're then going to go in to get everyone a bit motivated. They're going to go into storm. So you need to be more participative to mold that team around the plan. I think planning and the work breakdown structure has a huge role in that, what they call participative, democratic. So I see the processes support team leadership really.
Yeah.
Being clear what people have to do, clear what they have to do it by.
I think that actually at the beginning of the project, as you said, having that slightly more autocratic leadership style can be quite comforting for people that have just joined the project because they feel,
this person's got a vision. You wouldn't walk into like a new project team and say, right, well, what do you think we should do, everybody? Why do you think this project's important?
Why do you think we're here?
You get the sponsor to come and say, right, this is why this project's important to this organisation. And then you move into more participative issues where you say, right, well, how do you think you could contribute to the achievement of this vision?
Yes, that's quite nice, linking that with Tuckman, the forming, storming, norming and performing. We've then got the delegative or laissez-faire leadership
Yeah.
style. Is that only to be used in that performing stage, or are there other uses?
The problem is that different parts of the team are going to be in different phases of cycle at different stages, aren't they? But you certainly can't have a high-performance team and an autocratic leader, or can you? Can you have an autocratic leader and a high-performance team? You have to ask some of those high-tech billionaires, right? All those high-tech billionaires are both autocratic and micromanagers, but they also billionaires.
They've maybe got that balance between where they need to be autocratic and where they need to be delegative and laissez-faire.
They give the impression of being autocratic
Yeah,
and micromanagers,
absolutely.
but you can't lead a massive company as an autocrat, can you? So they probably do have people they trust. So that leads us on to when you delegate to people. When you can delegate is when they are competent, capable in their role, and you can trust them. So you wouldn't go into a project and say, right, start the project, you do what you want, people. No, I haven't got a vision. You just work it out amongst you. I do know somebody, a friend of mine, and he says their boss is like that. Just, well, you just sort of out. And it really annoys him. But can you micromanage a high-performance team?
I think it goes back then to team performance and motivation, doesn't it? That self-fulfillment aspect of it. People want a little bit of that freedom to be able to challenge themselves, make their own decisions, be responsible for things, have ownership over things. So that's in conflict with that.
So these have come out of Kelvin, Lerpert and White. Autocratic, participative, democratic and delegative. These are quite old models. I don't know when that was written. 1939. This is why I think the more recent research is more valid. I expect 1939 they probably did have quite autocratic. Was that just before the Second World War?
Just before the Second World War, So
the First World War was the sort of decline. Before then, it was very autocratic society, wasn't it? So you wouldn't use that language nowadays. I'm sure you'd have much more modern language to describe that. What's a more modern word for these?
I think it's maybe the description of do it my way. Let's collaborate and decide what way we should do it together, or do it your own way.
Don't you love the APM choosing the reference from
1939?
Sorry,
not quite 100 years ago, but nearly.
Almost 100 years ago.
So actually then, talking about maybe more modern approaches and style could move us on to the third learning outcome. So the third learning outcome is that we need to understand the importance of a coaching and mentoring style in leadership and the role of emotional intelligence. So let's separate those out a little bit. Coaching and mentoring has really been coming to the fore as a management approach and management style over recent years. Why is that important for a leader within a project environment?
I must say there's a really good blog on the APM's website about coaching and mentoring projects. It's referenced in the book, but if you Google it, you'll find it. Why is it important? Because you want to grow your people, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't want to be static. I see the project as a vehicle for growing the competence and capability of the people.
Absolutely.
It's not just about delivering the output and the outcome and hitting time, cost and quality. It's really about getting the team ready to deliver the next project, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And growing and developing them, and also engaging them in the project work, which I think then also has that ability to help them grow their skills and knowledge and experience and confidence as well. I think that's a key one. I mean, there are some scary stats about how many people leave roles, whether that's on projects or other roles, because of poor relationships with their managers and leaders within the organisation. And I think that actually using more of a coaching style within leadership and management roles can actually help engage people more in that, so that they're not feeling as if they want to jump ship.
Maybe there's more project managers did their training in 1939 than we know.
Yeah. quite possibly.
Coaching and mentoring are different. Coaching is where you use one of those grow models or development models and you work with someone to work out what goals they think are right for them, and it might be quite a short engagement to coach somebody in something, whereas mentoring is generally more longer term and it's more about discussing options with people and suggesting things they might consider.
I was told once that if you're coaching somebody, they're doing all of the hard work. You're asking the questions, you're leading them through a sequential process, but they're doing all of the thinking, they're coming up with the ideas. Whereas if you're acting more of a mentor, you're providing advice, guidance, suggestions, mainly based on your previous experience and your role. So it's a lot more of an even balance of the thinking that's going on in that conversation. And I think, as you said, mentoring is a longer structured relationship. People can have mentors for several years throughout their career, whereas you could coach somebody in the moment around a very specific thing, and it can be a very short interaction with somebody, as well as being more of a longer developmental goal. So what's the role of emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is a bit of a buzzword at the APM conference. Everything was about emotional intelligence. Yeah, really? Absolutely. Yeah.
When did you first meet emotional intelligence? 90s?
Yeah, I think so. People used to balance this IQ, EQ kind of thing.
Yeah, that's
probably
right.
maybe round about the turn of the millennium.
Maybe the APM's just discovered.
Yeah, they're bringing things up to date. It's not 1939 now.
Yeah, you got, normal intelligence, should we call it? And that's the ability to absorb facts and analyze data and academic stuff. But then I think in the noughties, people realize actually there's also human traits and human behaviors, the ability to understand others and understand yourself. And that is also a form of intelligence that project managers need to be aware of, because it affects the way projects perform. In the book, we talk about managing our understanding our own personality and behaviors of others, really. Understanding our feelings, being transparent about our feelings, and understanding our attitudes and our mindset and how that might affect others. So what were they saying at the conference then? You were there.
I found there was a great deal of emphasis balancing the need for the more practical, pragmatic, traditional project management skills, like the scheduling, the budgeting, all of those kind of things, with people skills. And I think certainly, given that we've got one of the 4 syllabus areas is grouped under people and behaviours, I think that this is being pushed up.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real shift that we've seen in this syllabus, is that there's much more focus on that leadership rather than technical skill.
Given the importance, the central role that people obviously play in our projects, I think that it's good to have that focus on them, to have that recognition that you need to have strengths in both of those areas.
Yeah, one of our larger clients has a really good saying. They say, hot hearts, cool heads. Cool heads deliver projects. Hot hearts get you in trouble. So you have to understand your own emotions, and you have to control your own emotions. Don't respond in the moment. Think about it. But you also have to understand what your emotions are going to do to others, and how those emotions are going to be perceived by others. And why they may be behaving in that way that they're behaving, because projects are full of pressure, aren't they?
I think that often project team members will very much look to the project manager as a guide for how they're feeling in a certain situation and what they're saying about something, how they're reacting to a situation. Project managers and, everybody needs to be aware of how to regulate their emotions, their reactions to certain things, because people can read things into that, and they might not be reading the correct things into that.
How many project managers you've worked with you would say are good leaders?
I'd say probably fewer than half.
Half?
Yeah.
Gosh, you've worked with some good leaders. I think it's the most difficult bit of project management. Half? Gosh, less than half. I'd say about 6.
Oh, really? Oh, although you've said that now, I can really clearly think of the very best project managers that were the best leaders.
And what differentiated them from the rest?
I think actually it was probably their emotional intelligence. It was their ability to be a people person, to make you feel as if they were really dealing with you as an individual within the context of the team, that they were thinking about your development as much as getting the project done.
I think it's the one thing that if I could go back in time and tell myself to do better, it would be that.
It's an interesting one. Another thing as well, particularly in projects where they need to be done, but there's a segment of stakeholders that you really do feel are not going to be well done by the project, maybe because there's going to be redundancies or things like that. I think the importance of empathy in the sponsor and the project manager is really important. Sometimes that's not always there. We've covered all of the learning outcomes then. Started off by discussing what leadership was, what makes a good leader. And then we had a bit of a chat about some of those models, Maslow, Herzberg and McGregor, different types of leadership styles that might be appropriate in different circumstances, and then have brought ourselves up to date from 1939 to talk about coaching and mentoring and the role of emotional intelligence.
Maybe we should write a new paper, Ruth.
Yes,
Thank
maybe.
you. Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you very much. Cheerio.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.